Since this particular material is aimed at providing a brief introduction to linguistics, I thought we'll begin with these three questions. What is linguistics? Definitions of language, and why study linguistics at all? In one sentence, linguistics can be defined as the scientific study of language. And in this context, when I use the word language, it means language in general, not a particular language. If we were concerned with studying an individual language, we would say, I'm studying English or Malayalam or French or whichever language we happen to be studying. But linguistics does not study one particular language, it studies language in general. So now, what are the definitions of language that are commonly considered by linguistics? Because when we are going to study something, we need to define the area of study. So if linguistics is the scientific study of language, we have to define this particular area of study, the particular area that we have chosen to study. So in the next slide, we'll be looking at some common definitions of language put forward by linguists over a period of time. And then we'll also take a look at why should we study linguistics. In his work, An Essay on Language, published in 1968, Richard Hall puts forward this particular definition of language. Language is the institution whereby humans communicate and interact with each other by means of habitually used oral, auditory, arbitrary symbols. Now there are some key terms here, key words here in this particular definition that should be explained more. For instance, the word that I have highlighted first, humans. So language is a very important means of communication, and in this particular definition, it is defined as something exclusive to humans. So why not animals? I mean, animals also have various means of communication. They also have their own systems of communication. For example, if you look at bees, a hive of bees, they have a certain system of dance with which they communicate with each other. Whales, which travel in groups called pods, have their own system of communication of using various whistles to indicate various things. Now, what is particular about the system of communication used by animals is that their communication is limited to a very small number of messages in the here and now, like hunger and thirst, fear and anger, like very short relay of messages. Whereas in the case of humans, the situation is entirely different. Humans can send an infinite number of messages to their fellow beings. We can talk about the past and the future in addition to the present. We can convey our emotions and our ideas to other people using language as opposed to what the animals can do. So, in various definitions given by various linguists, language is defined as something exclusive to humans. So here I have highlighted three more terms in the definition, and the first one is habitually used. It means that language is a habit. I'm not talking about secondary languages, talking about the primary language, what we call mother tongue. When we speak in our mother tongue, when we are conversing in daily life, we're not really thinking about what we say. We just use it as a part of habit. Now the next term, oral auditory. It refers to the two organs that we use in the production of language, or what we call speech in English. That is, oral refers to the mouth and auditory refers to the ear. You'll discuss this in detail when you study organs of speech in your phonetics class, but just keep this in mind. When I use the term oral auditory, I'm referring to the organs involved in the production and reception of speech. Now the next term, arbitrary. The term arbitrary, when you say that language is an institution of arbitrary symbols, what I'm saying is there is no relationship, so to speak, between the word and the idea that it conveys. For example, in English, what we refer to or who we refer to as a boy can be ladka in Hindi, garzon in French, and aangutti in Malayalam. So if one idea has so many terms in different languages, it means that there is no logical connection between the signifier and the signified. The signifier is the word boy, B-O-Y, boy, and the signified is the idea that the word refers to. So when you say that language is a set of arbitrary symbols, it means that there is no connection between the signifier, there is no logical connection between the signifier and the signified, the word and the idea that it conveys. Now we move on to the last part of the material, that is reasons as to why we should study linguistics. Language awareness. So even if you're the native speaker of a particular language, say for example, even if you're the native speaker of English, you need not know everything about the language and its usage. Say for example, when you're writing a letter, do you use yours faithfully, yours respectfully, yours sincerely, yours lovingly? So these kind of choices of using language in particular contexts are heavily dependent on our language awareness. So that is where linguists and linguistics comes into play. Then speech therapy. So if somebody has a speech defect, you want a person who has training in language and linguistics to correct this particular speech defect. Now, computers and linguistics, this is actually a very recent and very happening area of study. All of you must have heard about artificial intelligence. Like we have Alexa, Siri, and Cortana, and all these softwares which respond to us in our own language. In order to develop this kind of an artificial intelligence, you need not only knowledge of computer softwares, but you also need to know how languages are structured. So that is where linguistics comes into play. Language acquisition. Now this particular aspect and the last aspect can be connected with each other. Language acquisition and language teaching. So when somebody is teaching a language which is not their mother tongue, say for example, if I am teaching you English grammar, English is definitely not your mother tongue. You're not a native speaker of English, and I'm teaching a bunch of students who are not native speakers of English. And when I am doing that, I need to have an awareness of the structure of language, the structure of the English language, if I have to teach them properly, if I have to teach my students properly. So again, you need a scientific understanding of the structure of language, not only with regards to language teaching, but with regards to language acquisition as well. And finally, language and literature. Say, for example, when you're reading something written by Shakespeare, the English used in the 16th century is very different from the English that we speak now. So, in this regard, a linguist, somebody who is an expert in the study of language, can help out in figuring out the various interpretations and meanings behind every word that we no longer use. So language awareness, speech therapy, computers, language acquisition and teaching, language and literature. These are the various reasons why the study of linguistics is of extreme importance.